You can fall for an avoidant man before you even realize who he is. Because avoidant attachment doesn't just show up when things get serious. It shows up in the first week, the first conversations, the first stories he tells you, the way he lives his life, and the tiny inconsistencies that you can feel but you can't explain. And the most painful part? Most women don't recognize these signs until it's too late. Until you're anxious, attached, and suddenly trying to decode a man who feels like a stranger. But you can actually spot avoidant behavior early. So early that you can save months of confusion, hurt, and emotional spiraling. This is part 1 of a 3-part series, and today we're looking at the very first signs. His lifestyle, his patterns, his stories, and the subtle things that tell you he's not emotionally safe long before he pulls away. Let's get into it. Avoidant attachment isn't just about romance. It's a worldview. It's a way of avoiding life. You can often spot an avoidant man before the relationship even starts, simply by looking at the way he manages the rest of his world. You can start by looking for these things. He's been in the same job for years, even though he hates it. He doesn't push himself to grow. He avoids personal responsibility unless it's forced on him. He avoids conflict everywhere, friends, family, work. He avoids making decisions, big or small. He avoids emotional discomfort in all forms. And he stays in routines that require nothing from him. Avoidant people don't just avoid intimacy, they avoid effort, risk, vulnerability, and forward movement in all areas. I dated somebody who lived in a big city for 5 years. And for the whole time, she worked in the same job, 6 days a week. Now, looking back, it makes perfect sense. That job was safe, predictable, emotionally simple, routine. In short, it was avoidant friendly. It didn't ask anything from her, emotionally or personally. Avoidants default to the life that requires least vulnerability. And if he's avoidant, he's avoiding long before he meets you. Let's talk about the avoidant mask. This is where most women get confused. In the relationship, avoidant men rarely start avoidant. They start intense, present, consistent, affectionate, emotionally open, planning dates, texting all day, talking about life, dreams, vulnerability. It feels like a soulmate connection, especially if you're anxiously attached, because that early intensity feels like safety, like belonging, like home. But here's what most women don't know. This early version might not be his baseline. It might be his mask, the fantasy self he uses to connect just enough to feel wanted, before the reality of closeness becomes too much. Watch for whether his early behavior matches the rest of his life. If he's emotionally open with you early, but emotionally closed with everyone else, or if he's consistent with you early, but inconsistent everywhere else? Or if he's driven and intentional with you early, but passive and avoidant in his own life? Then what you're seeing is not the real him. It's the version he wishes he could be, but can't sustain once intimacy becomes real. Before the big avoidant withdrawal, there are tiny, almost invisible shifts that happen very early on. You only feel them if you're sensitive, and anxious attachment women are sensitive. And that's not a flaw. Look for these early dips. Slightly longer gaps between texts. A tone that suddenly feels cold. Plans becoming vague. Less emotional depth. Less curiosity about you. Avoiding personal questions. Brushing off anything intimate. Being less warm. Less expressive. A pullback that's subtle but unmistakable. These aren't the big avoidant shutdown yet. These are the test withdrawals, the early distance experiments to see if closeness feels safe or overwhelming. They show up in the first 2 to 4 weeks, and they're one of the clearest early signs. So what about when he talks about his past relationships? This is one of the biggest early signs, and most women miss it because it comes wrapped in vulnerability. Avoidant men often talk about their exes early on. But the stories they tell are one-sided, shaped around being the person who was mistreated, overwhelmed, or abandoned. They'll say things like, "My ex was really emotional. She needed too much from me. She made me feel suffocated. I could never do anything right." She stopped trying. I had to carry everything. And if you're anxiously attached, this hits your system like a mission. I'll be the safe one. I'll love him better. He just needs someone stable. He deserves softness. I'll fix what she broke. And you bond fast because you feel like you're repairing a wound. But here's the truth you can only see later. Avoidants often create the situation they complain about. Because avoidant people tend to reject help, or they criticize your attempts to help. They push you away emotionally and avoid shared plans. They refuse teamwork and insist on doing everything themselves. They avoid interdependence. They can even act selfishly without even realizing it. And they shut down closeness or collaboration. And over time, their partner shuts down. Not out of laziness, but out of exhaustion, discouragement, emotional exclusion. I know this because I've heard this story. My ex would sit on the sofa doing nothing. He was checked out. He was coming home late, drinking alone. He basically shut down emotionally. It sounded like he abandoned her, but now I can see what really happened. He probably tried at first, but every attempt was met with criticism, resistance. I'll do it myself. Selfishness masked as independence, avoidance. And eventually, he stopped trying. He didn't become lazy. He became defeated, shut out of the relationship he was trying to participate in. Avoidants retell the story of their past relationships as though they were the one who was left behind, when in reality they often push their partner out without ever even noticing. And here's the key takeaway. If the feelings he says his ex created in him are the exact feelings you start to feel with him, then the problem wasn't his ex. It's his pattern. And that is one of the strongest early signs you can possibly get. At the deepest level, your nervous system already knows. Women often feel avoidant behavior in their body long before they understand it cognitively. You feel anxious, slightly insecure, emotionally hungry, afraid to ask for clarity, worried about pushing him away, scared to express your needs, confused by the mismatch, hyper-aware of every tiny micro-shift. This isn't neediness. This isn't being too sensitive. It's your nervous system reacting to inconsistency, unpredictability, or emotional distance. Avoidants don't just pull back. They create uncertainty in the entire connection, and your body knows it long before your mind catches up. That was part 1 of spotting avoidant men early. The signs that you can catch in the first few weeks, before you fall in love, before the push-pull begins, before the confusion. Next Sunday, part 2 drops. We're going into the early emotional tells, the texting patterns, the first push-pull cycles, the avoidance discomfort with real closeness, and the moment the switch flips. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the bell, and I'll see you next Sunday.